all of you, and really excited to go through a variety of things that we think are probably top of mind. So my name's Diana Economy. I'm the director of full-time MBA admissions at Michigan Ross, but I'm also an alum of the MBA program. And I chose Ross for a variety of reasons, but importantly, its impact orientation as an MBA program. So my internship was helping to open up a charter school in Detroit. And my MAP project, which you'll hear a little bit more about, was taking a look at the vocational training system in India and trying to figure out how the public and private sectors could come together to strengthen that system so that multinational corporations would want to locate their businesses there. Along the way, did a lot of impact-oriented things, served as a peer career coach, which is, we have over 80 students who are hired to be peer career coaches to help their peers with the career search and process. I specifically help folks that were looking at social impact, that were looking at maybe more niche or non-traditional careers. So just so many great experiences and so many reasons that I've now stayed with Michigan Ross or come back, I guess, into an admissions role and get to represent this school that I love. So we are going to spend a little bit of time today quickly talking about some of the highlights about Michigan Ross. So some of you may have heard some of these things. This is just to kind of get some of the top line stuff out there so we all have a baseline. It also speaks to some of our application too, like why do we ask the essay questions that we do, right? So I think that will give us some foundation there. We're going to give you some framework, a little bit of just how to think about schools in general, like which schools to apply to, things that should be top of mind for you, and then how Ross fits in. And then we're going to go through the consortium application elements, or just some of our essay questions, some of our other sort of tips as you start to think about getting a consortium essay and application, consortium essays and application together. With that in mind, we have a couple folks that you want to meet, and I want to start with Kanika.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kanika Holt, and I am the Assistant Director of Admissions for the full-time MBA program. I am a Michigan native, as you heard of my journeys to the west side of the state. And then I also got my undergraduate degree for the University of Michigan. I've been with the team for the past 7 years, and primarily what I look at is managing our interview process, in addition to working with our student ambassadors. So it's great to see everyone here. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Excellent. And so Kanika's going to help out with, some of the things. If y'all have questions on the chat, she'll be sharing some links and stuff there as we talk about things as well. So feel free to engage. And then Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina Puder. I'm a 2019 alumni. I did an MBA and a master's in science from the College of Engineering. Before Michigan, I was working in DC in private wealth management. I'm originally from Texas, so super proud Texan, and also the winters are really not that bad. It's fine. And then after Michigan, I transitioned into product management. So I was a senior product manager at a company in Boston called Simply Safe. And I just switched to a new job last week. So this is week number 2. And I'm at a startup that's fully remote, which is super exciting, really fast paced. Yeah. And I'm in Chicago right now visiting Ross friends.
Cool. Christina, can you tell them a couple of the things you were involved with while you were at Ross?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I did bus crew, which I talked about in my interview, which is like running the tailgates. I was a peer coach, like Diana was, which means I helped other people transition and get internships and jobs. And I actually still do career coaching on the side of my real job now because I loved it so much. I was a TA for the Living Business Leadership class. I was on the Baja racing team. So I helped build a race car with a bunch of engineers on North Campus, which was a great like hands-on learning, learn how to use machinery, how to build like trust and relationships with engineers, and definitely did more stuff, but it does not come to mind right now.
That's okay.
It'll probably ring a bell later. And my map was with Experian in Chile. So I got to go down to Chile, which was awesome.
Nice. All right, Justin. Can y'all hear him or no? No. I was like, is that me? Are you there? No.
Oh, how about now?
Now we got you. Yeah.
My headphones always mess up. I was marveling Christina's experience with the race cars, but clearly that just shocked my MacBook. I am Justin Rufin Blanchett, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I am going on year 2. I'm holding on to it. I'll say I'm a year 1.5. But I went to Kennesaw State University, studied sports management. My career was basically in sports, entertainment, and tech. And let's see what else. This summer, I'm at Nike doing global strategy and tech. On campus, I'm the president of the Entertainment Digital Media Club. I'm on the Real Estate Fund. I'm a head of corporate relations for the Sports Business Club. And I think I hit everything there. But my MAP project also was with Comcast, and the scope of it was essentially basically doing their investment strategy in the wireless connectivity space. So basically in line with my entertainment and tech experience. So very, very happy about that. We could talk more about that later.
Yeah, and Justin's also a consortium liaison, one of the few that we have, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how how that plays out in your experience, in particular, as you're preparing for the consortium orientation program, which Justin just helped folks go through. The other thing, Justin, that I love is that you came in and you're like, I want to do sports, media and entertainment and tech, and you're doing sports, media and entertainment and tech. Like it's like
Yeah,
spot on,
laser
exactly
focused.
what you said you wanted to do. So proud of you, exciting to watch you do all those cool things. So, all right, cool. So let me get going here. So we're going to talk briefly about just some of the things that differentiate Michigan Ross from other programs. So you've probably taken a look at Ross, so you know hands-on learning is our thing. We have more hands-on learning experiences than any other school. We think you learn best by doing, right? Potentially failing, learning from your mistakes, having a supportive community around you to try new things and to build during your time at Michigan Ross. In fact, if you're not challenging yourself during business school, we kind of say you're not doing it right, right? You've got to really be pushing yourself during those 2 years to get the most out of the experience, and we're going to help you do that. We also have more top-ranked grad programs than nearly any other university. You heard Christina talk about her dual degree with engineering. Actually, the degree that she did was very similar to Kellogg's Triple M program. So it had design and engineering elements to it. So what's cool is that you can access the university broadly, and whether you're taking classes at the policy school, the School of Environment, School of Information Engineering, those are all top-ranked programs, and grad students that you're going to have relationships with that might be at Michigan Ross in some of your classes from time to time. So University of Michigan is just a great place to be as a graduate student. Michigan's also a great place to be as an alum, over 600,000 alums. And one of the things you'll notice is that, there are some business schools where when you graduate from the business school, you're very specific to like a graduate of like that business school. This is very much, you're graduating from Michigan, right? Where you have access to the whole network. So think about if you wanted to start a business and you needed to call a lawyer, they're going to pick up the phone because you went to Michigan. You need an engineer as Christina, maybe you want to build race cars like Christina did, right? So you're going to pick up the phone and call an engineer. And they're going to pick up the phone too. So huge, really geographically dispersed, awesome network. And you'll see that in the alumni effectiveness as well. The Economist ranks us, this is amongst business schools and MBA programs in particular, in the most approachable alums. And 95% of our students are career switchers. They're switching either function or industry, maybe both. And a lot of people point to hands-on learning as a huge reason where they've been able to truly practice the skills that they're most interested in building while they're in school. And then they're able to demonstrate those to a future employer. So we talked a little bit about MAP. So most of you probably have heard of MAP. The last 7 weeks of your first year, rather than being in the classroom, you're going to be on a consulting-like engagement. So 7 weeks is truly like having a second internship. What happens is you're given a whole bunch of MAP projects, lots of awesome projects to choose from. You get to pick the ones or rank the ones that are most exciting to you. You get placed on a project with a team of about 4 to 6 people, and that is all you are doing for 7 weeks. So keep in mind that your internship's about 10 to 12 weeks and MAP is 7 weeks. Again, especially for those of you that are thinking of dabbling in new or different careers, whether something you want to do immediately or maybe something you want to do later, MAP is a great way to do that. Some of the MAP projects are even with startups where the startup's like 6 people and the MAP team is 6 people, right? Doubling the size of the startup team. You're really, really getting in the weeds with the founders of these companies. So could be with big companies, could be with, major international nonprofits, healthcare focused organizations, you name it. The other thing we say here at Michigan Ross is go blue, go anywhere. And if you were to ask me, hey, Diana, what is the number one misconception about Michigan Ross? I would tell you that people somehow feel that you're going to be stuck geographically in a place that you're not interested in being long-term. Nothing could be further from the truth. We have really, really widespread geography in terms of where people end up. So usually it's about 18 to 20% of the class goes to Chicago, which essentially means 80% go someplace it's not Chicago, right? So lots of different locations, lots of great top recruiters. We'll actually talk a little bit when we talk about the consortium orientation program about access to recruiters. But just to give some context, typically about 60% of our students go into consulting or tech. But don't worry, if you're interested in other things, that there's obviously a substantial portion that are going into finance, venture capital, marketing, operations, social impact, you name it. So we talked a little bit about the alumni base of the school as a whole, but this is the Michigan Ross alumni base. And one thing that I think is pretty distinctive that a lot of folks don't know about is this is not just a relationship for 2 years that we have with our students and our alumni, it's for life, right? So you are going to have continued access to executive education courses for free for life. So think about the number of times you're likely to switch your job after school. And so let's say a few years later, you're going from managing a team of 5 to managing a team of 50. And you're like, man, I need to brush up on some of the management and organizations classes that I took. You're going to come back to Ann Arbor for free, these like $10,000 classes that are taught by our faculty, and brush up those skills. Or you need to brush up on digital marketing or some of the latest best practices around certain things. You're going to have access to that for free for life. We also have a dedicated career advisor who is specific to helping you get the job that you're looking for. Again, at that 2-year mark, 5-year mark, whenever you're switching, and you're going to have access to career support. We also have dedicated entrepreneurship support for those people who are looking to launch their business, whether you're in school or as an alum. So these are some of the elements of Ann Arbor, but one of the things that I want to do is I actually want to pull in Justin and Christina here, right? Because I think learning about the place that you're going to learn in, it's better to hear firsthand from the people who are living it or who have lived it. So Justin, I'll start with you. You're interning this summer from Ann Arbor largely, right? So you've gotten a chance to spend a little bit of time here. Tell them a little bit about your perspective on Ann Arbor.
I love Ann Arbor. I think it's for the most part of my professional career, I lived in either Atlanta or New York City. So obviously Ann Arbor is a nice change of pace. But the restaurants here are actually pretty good. I was looking to see if they have any of mine on there. So like Black Pearl and Tomakun. So they have a lot of Tomakun's like a Japanese restaurant. Black Pearls kind of has like a New York feel to it. They've got some nice bar scene as well. And so I like the fact that it's like a college town-esque in some of like the chain restaurants, but then it has, some restaurants that remind you a little bit of home. And so I thoroughly enjoyed being in town and just getting takeout every once in a while.
Christina, what do you think?
I also loved Ann Arbor. I didn't pick Michigan because of Ann Arbor, but it's something that I grew to love. So I lived in Munger, which I thought was a great opportunity to live with other students, and it was affordable. The things that I loved about Ann Arbor were that it was a small town that was walkable. So I felt like I was always in the Michigan community, and I'd run into friends when I was walking places. I really appreciated that it was really affordable. So I don't feel like social events were exclusive of whether or not you had the money to pay for them. There were pretty much anything you could do that was $20 or under, which I really appreciated. But then there's really great restaurants if you do want to have a fancier night out. And it's really close to Detroit, where it's not expensive to go home to see family, to go on a trip in the summer or during spring break. It's a $12 bus ticket that there's a bus that picks up in downtown Ann Arbor and takes you just to the airport, or it's a $30 Uber ride, which is not crazy. I love that it was your own town, but then you weren't stuck there. If you needed to go somewhere else, it was really accessible to the rest of the world. But yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, right on. Well, I wish we could have you all visit. I know that that's kind of a top of mind question for folks. And, right now we're still kind of working through things. And by that, I mean, honestly, things are just changing weekly. So we already knew we were going back to a residential fall. So that's great. And honestly, probably just a week or two ago, we got even more and frankly good guidance, right, for no masks or lower masks. There's still masks in the classroom, but just if people are vaccinated and able to interact and engage a little bit more freely, which is nice. I think that we're still kind of working on what does that mean from folks coming in from the outside in, right? A little bit different than folks who are here all the time and some of those systems and things in place. But never fear. Our diversity weekend actually is going to be remote. We were planning for that anyways. And I will tell you that from an accessibility and as Christina just mentioned, inclusion, like expense perspective, right? We have, broader ways to be able to engage virtually, which we're going to leverage. But I'm hoping that before folks have to choose, right, to come to Michigan Ross or not, so think about this as maybe 6 months plus out, that we're going to have some opportunities for you to come see us. But do ask our student ambassadors about life in Ann Arbor. They'd be happy to share. And then, of course, our consortium fam. So our last 9 student body presidents have come from the consortium. We have the largest student or consortium alumni population. We got more consortium apps than any other school this past year. We have the largest consortium class. So the numbers are obviously quite strong, but what I'm so proud of is to see just how well represented in these leadership roles, not just at the student body level, but across different clubs and organizations. We have 10 section presidents, right? 5 sections of MBA 2s, 5 sections of MBA 1s. 9 of the 10 are women. 6 of the 10 come from the consortium. Right. So these are the kind of indicators, not just the percentages and stuff that you see in the class profiles, but beyond that you want to keep an eye out for as you're helping to assess schools. So let's talk a little bit about some things to consider as you're looking at programs. So I started to allude to that a little bit already. But you've probably already taken a look at the rankings. One of the things I just want to mention to you as you look at the rankings is almost none of them, in fact, I can't think of any, take a look at what I just mentioned. So if what I just mentioned matters to you, the last 9 student body presidents come from the consortium, all these leadership roles, not one ranking takes that into account. Not one ranking takes into account the strength of your experience really, and like how engaged you are, where you're going to thrive. That's not what the rankings look at, right? So just be mindful of each of the rankings that you're looking at. Click on the methodology, right, as to what they're looking at. I will tell you that, for example, US News, 25% of US News' admissions, they care about your GMAT and your GPA. That's it. Right? So when you're taking a look at the rankings, know what they mean and know what you value and what you're thinking about, right? So just keep that in mind. I know that there's something that people use as a guidepost. They're fine to use as a guidepost. Just know what you're looking at, right? As you're evaluating that. That said, Michigan does very well. Michigan Ross does really well on the rankings, in particular, the ranking that evaluates all the specializations. So US News ranks the finance department at various places, the accounting and marketing and operations and all these things. Michigan is ranked in the top 10 and 10 of the business specializations that they rank. The only school that has more top 10 business rankings is Stanford, right, than Michigan Ross. So that breadth of excellence I mentioned because a lot of people will say, hey, what's Michigan Ross known for? Are you guys a finance school? Are you a marketing school? Are you operations? Yes. Right? The answer to that is yes. And so you'll hear that as you talk to our students and student ambassadors in terms of how well-rounded the school is. Location. So we talked a little bit about that. So something to factor in. What kind of place, are you going to be learning? What kind of community is that going to be building? I'll tell you that most people aren't from Michigan or Ann Arbor. So you've got a bunch of students that are coming in from all different places. New York is by far our #1 metro from which we get inbound students, followed by DC, followed by Chicago, San Francisco, right? So most people are coming, and then internationally, of course, most people are coming from outside and coming there to learn, to engage, to grow together, which I think makes it pretty special. The class size and demographics. So I mentioned to you the class profile page. That's certainly something to take a look at. But I would encourage you to actually take a look at our ambassador website a little more closely. Kanika will put in there, if she hasn't already, both our student ambassador website as well as our Ross Consortium website. Okay, we have a lot of people out there, right? Our ambassador website alone is like 200-300 plus people, okay? Because we know there's different parts of your identity, of your experience that you want to be able to connect and engage with different people. So not just the class profile page, but I would say take a look at the ambassador page to get a good feel of who's at Michigan Ross. The test score range, that just gives you some sense for, for where you might stand as it relates to your test score. Don't worry, it is the middle 80th range, right? So you've got 20% or 10% below, 10% above. And this past year, we have about 15 to 20% of our incoming MBA ones who waived the test. So we'll talk a little bit about to waive the test or not, what that looks like in a second. But that's something you might look at as you're looking at schools. And then student backgrounds. So usually we have about 20% of our class that comes from consulting. That can vary a little bit. So that's a little bit on the higher end. Most people in their backgrounds are represented in the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% range, right? So this isn't where like any one background dominates the class profile in terms of where people were working before school. And I would say similarly, it's pretty well balanced between business backgrounds, engineering backgrounds, and liberal arts. Justin, Christina, Kanika, anything else to add to anything I just mentioned?
Not yet.
Okay. Justin?
Say same. I don't know if you wanted us to talk about what our criteria or like how we.
Yeah, that's, what, I think we'll pause because there's a couple more coming up, right? So a little bit, we're going to get a little deeper. So that was kind of overall, right? And so obviously you're going to be taking a look at the employment outcomes. So do take a look at the employment report, take a look at where people go geographically, take a look at the kind of companies people go to. We try to be more transparent there. I think we are, honestly, than other schools in terms of the number of people by company. You'll be able to see all of that there. What you won't be able to see in the employment report, and I want to bring Justin in here in a little bit as well to talk about some of the consortium specific, orientation program and consortium specific recruiting outcomes. So Justin, you're on deck for that in just a second. You can just talk about your peer set even and where people are going this summer. But our alumni network, the size, the breadth, the accessibility, people rave about the alumni network and its support. And specifically the consortium network has been incredible to help our students find outcomes. And then the recruiting support. Actually, Justin, before we get to OP, Christina, can you talk a little bit about like kind of the fact groups? And you said you were a peer coach, so you helped to lead people through that process. Can you talk briefly about that?
Yep. So business school is 2 years. During your first year, you do like class, map, internship, and then you become a second year. And in the second year, some students become fact group leaders, which means that you help mostly first year students in finding that internship. And the way it works is that like you have to apply to the job. Is actually, I think there was like 2 rounds of interviews. It's quite a process. The career office to like choose if you're basically qualified and know what you're doing in order to help other students. And then they help coach you along the way. So I helped students who wanted to switch into tech. And that meant that so I have a whole curriculum and I get a small group of students who are all interested in what they want to do for the summer. And we meet once a week and I walk them through like, okay, first we're going to figure out, is this really what you want to do? And why? Next, we're going to work on like your odyssey of tell me about yourself. Then we're going to work on your resumes. Then we're going to work on your interview prep and your networking. And it's just like a step-by-step way to help people get that internship. And then ultimately like can lead to a full-time job. Then on the side, you can make appointments with career coaches. So you can do like, I just want a one-on-one resume interview. I just want a one-on-one like mock interview. And so I would spend a couple hours a week also just meeting with first and second year students who wanted extra help to prepare for interviews or job applications. And I thought it was really fun, really rewarding. And it's a great way to also like go through the process and not feel alone. One of the things I will say is that Consortium really helped me prepare for school. So when I got to my first year, I actually had my resume done. I'd already done a bunch of interviews. I actually already had an internship offer with Amazon. And I felt so ahead of my classmates that I spent my first year helping them anyway, and then officially became a career coach. But I think that's a really big difference of Consortium, and especially Consortium at Michigan. I think Justin can probably take it from here of like what that means, but it's really awesome to get to school and be like, oh, I'm not lost. I'm actually very prepared.
No, I completely agree. I think it was like a boot camp starting in like, was it June or before June, April, so April, May, like the level of training that we had was just so hands-on in terms of like going through the Odyssey, which is like, again, what Christina mentioned, like our introduction to like recruiters and to speaking to different people across the companies that you're interested in. to doing the resume reviews. They had like an internal software that was going to basically tell you like all the buzzwords and stuff like that that you should be implementing. And then the best part for me was just like syncing up with classmates who were interested in different the industries that I was interested in. So we had kind of built out these little subgroups, you know, whether it's tech or consulting and so forth. And so we were in the trenches together, sharing resources. And then once we got to OP, we were always communicating and connecting with one another. So again, that training kind of really came to fruition. This year was a little bit different with the pandemic and stuff, but like people were getting offers at OP. And then, you know, by the time we got to campus and we're doing that full-fledged recruiting, we were already primed and ready to go, versus everybody else was kind of catching up. So I really felt prepared for interviews throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, the preparation that we do for orientation program, I'm telling you, it starts in April. And when I say it starts in April, if you apply in round 2, you may not have made a decision on whether you're coming to Ross. And we're like, that's fine. That's cool. We got to go. You know, we got to get you ready, right? Got to get you ready. And so there is some serious prep between like literally middle of April, beginning of June, because you are going to have access to top recruiters at the orientation program. I mean, literally like June 10th or 12th or whatever, you're going to be, you know, you're going to be game on. You might still be deciding which career path, right? So now think about how important the alumni network is, the student support. You got a buddy match. They're going to have no questions stupid or off limits, right? We're going to have sessions where you're going to get all that out behind the scenes with the fam, right? You know, try to get yourself ready. And Justin really played a really big role in helping to get everybody organized for that. So that's, I mean, that itself is a differentiator. I will say what Christina mentioned in terms of the fact groups and the weekly curriculum that you're going to go through, the peer review and things that'll happen throughout the year. I ask students at the end of the summer, hey, you just interned at A and B and C, big top name companies, and you probably interned with 7, 8, 9, 10 interns from 7, 8, 9, 10 different schools. What'd you think? How prepared did you feel? And they were like, I'm so glad I was at Ross. I talked to people at like top 5 schools where they were doing cases by themselves in their room. Right? I'm not even talking COVID. I'm just talking about the infrastructure that we have to support students is exceptional. It really is. And again, we talked about that career switcher stat. It's another big reason for it. So just keep an ear out. We're talking about, right, things to look for as you're trying to assess fit for you. Justin, Christina, anything else?
I think rolling right off of MAP into your internship is really helpful. I was terrified. So I interned at Amazon and I was like, oh God, I'm not ready for this. All right, this is terrifying, but like, it's going to be good for me. I'm a career switcher. It's going to be great. And going through MAP, I felt so prepared when I finally got to my internship. I was like, I literally just did this. I just like defined a scope of work. I just like made an action plan and like went through like a really quick condensed project. I feel much more prepared. So I think that the way that Ross structures it is very helpful.
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback off of the fact groups. So like I did digital consulting because I was trying to decide between consulting and like sports and tech and so forth. And I felt like that level of training prepared me so well that like I was so prepared for the Nike interviews. I interviewed with like Google and Facebook as well. And the guy who was the head of our fact group was going back to Bain. And he was the most like personable, like easy to reach. All like every week he was training with us, but then like he would set up one-on-ones, and he's providing so many resources that for me, like I was talking to students from other schools, and I was like almost like having to like talk to them through like what he was teaching me. It was like a Karate Kid moment, like wax on, wax off. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, I thought it was like the best training, and Christina touched on it as well. Like I had maybe 10 or 12 people who I was like casing with consistently, where I felt like other schools were not having that same level of like buy-in or I guess collaboration. So I couldn't thank them enough for doing that. That was really, really great.
Yeah, so dig a little deeper than the employment report, again, leveraging the student ambassadors to kind of learn a little bit more about how they prepared for maybe your particular area of interest. It's one of the things you can do with our ambassador pages, of course, filter on interests. So thinking about academics, right? So you're going to be looking at how do I learn best? One of the things I want to mention is that we do case method. We actually probably do, I don't know, 60% of the core is case. So we like case. We just don't like case 100% of the time, right? Not everything in our perspective is best taught through case. And so that offers faculty the ability to have flexibility to teach that course on that day in the way that's going to make most sense to get that material across. So it's going to be case method some of the time. Where possible, as I mentioned, we're trying to do hands-on learning because you get to apply what you're learning and try to practice those skills while you're in school. But so you're going to want to keep that in mind as you're looking at schools. So what's the balance of how education is taught? What kind of interdisciplinary opportunities are there? So Michigan has a ton because of all the great graduate programs that we've talked about. You know, specializations, dual degrees, we've got also a lot of opportunities there, but truly you get to customize your experience in the way that's going to make most sense for you. You heard Justin say, I'm interested in tech and digital and entertainment and marketing and sports. And you heard Christina say, I'm interested in race cars and engineers. And Christina, you're a poli-sci major, right? So you're like a liberal arts major that like went into like all these different things, right? So you want a school that's going to be a foundation that's going to allow you to explore your various interests. So do keep an eye on that. And Ross has got a lot of great opportunities there as well. Global opportunities are back on the books, right? So people are going to start going studying abroad and such again. And so I look forward to seeing that increase. What I will tell you is that abroad in a normal year is not just curricularly, it can be co-curricularly, it could be socially, right? So you have these kind of bigger breaks at different times in the year where somebody will say, hey, I'm getting married in India, come, right? It's on December 30th, right? Like, you know, over the holidays, come on out, right? And 30 classmates might roll to India. That's different than even just the academic experiences that you might consider. So do ask students about those experiences there. And then last thing, just focus on fit. Focus, you know, does a school focus on creating an inclusive culture and community? So asking our students about how they get involved with that and helping to create that, I think you'll hear a really strong narrative around that. How students and alumni describe the experience, more what you're going to be listening for is the consistency with which they express the experience, right? So, you know, obviously if you talk to the one person that does exactly what you want to do and has your interests and backgrounds and whatever, you're going to hear exactly what you think you'd hear, right? But like, are you hearing similar themes from the second, third, fourth, fifth person that you talk to? Not exactly the same experience, but just a similar reflection on the experience. Clubs and extracurriculars, take a look at the club web pages, see the different opportunities that you have to engage. Take a look at who's running the club. So click on the leadership, see who's running the clubs, and then finding your specific place where you think you can personally thrive. And that's going to be, of course, different for everybody. So actually, Justin, I'll pause there because you were saying criteria. Tell me a little bit about how you thought about prioritizing the schools you ended up putting on your list.
I was writing them down because you're reminding me of some things. So I definitely did have like rankings. I had an idea of like where I wanted the school to stand in terms of like having that global notoriety. Before coming to business school, I had worked for a bunch of startups, and so I wanted to go to a program I think that could add more brand notoriety to like my resume. I think number two was the network, which I could talk a little bit about. I'll talk about it quickly. Like, the Michigan network is crazy. When I was in New York and I came back from a diversity weekend, I was wearing a Michigan shirt and I must have got yelled at like a bunch of times saying "Go Blue." And I think at that point I realized like, okay, this is the place that I really wanted to be. But then like it transpired like throughout the school year too. So like I took advantage of this virtual experience and I guess the whole like, you know, interdisciplinary experience as well. I had interned for two companies and the two people that I had worked for were Michigan alum, one undergrad, one MBA. And that was just from like cold emailing them through LinkedIn, and they provided that opportunity. The third thing was like sports. And so I went to a small school. And so I wanted a school that I could have that kind of sports experience. And Michigan speaks for itself. Michigan basketball is amazing. The employment as well as I was looking at to see where people were being placed at. And I think it hit all the boxes. Diane already showed a bunch of the companies that the people were working for. And everybody's going to like MBBs and these big tech firms. And they were consistently coming to campus. And so I felt like that level of exposure was there. And I already talked about the experiential learning, but like, again, like I had a lot of different interests. I knew that like entertainment and tech was like my bread and butter, but I was interested in real estate. So I joined a real estate fund. And then I was part of the first ever sports tech conference, and that Michigan provided that opportunity too. So like just a lot of opportunities being thrown your way, and you really can just take advantage of it and really place, you know, put your place here in Michigan. So I really enjoyed that piece of it.
Nice. Christina?
I had two big factors. So one was the network. Before school, so I was a political science major at a liberal arts school. I went to Amherst College. Then I worked for a member of Congress, and then I worked in private wealth management. And then I was like, now I'm going to go into tech. I was like, I'm like definitely going to change jobs and careers again. And so I need a network that's going to be really responsive and helpful. And so I think the slide before, Diane had said, like, look for the story that people tell you when you talk to them. And I would say, like a level before that is look at how much response you get. Like, do people answer these emails and calls? Because when I was looking at schools, so I did MLT and they made me do like a ton of research on schools. And Michigan was a school where every single person answered my email and then like connect me with somebody else. And I did not have that at other schools. And so I thought for my future career, this is going to be really useful. And actually, quick plug for that, the job that I just started, I got because I networked with a Michigan undergrad who had just started there. So it's this like startup that just raised 154 million from Andreessen. It's like now a unicorn. It's super cool. And I thought I like loved what they were doing. I applied. I went into the ether. I never heard anything. And I looked on LinkedIn and found the first thing I do on LinkedIn is I always look up Michigan. And there's almost always somebody who went to Michigan at like almost any company. So I found this one girl in sales, messaged her on LinkedIn. She got back to me in like 20 minutes. She was like, let's do a call. I did a call with her. On our call, she's like, let me just Slack the head of product. So she's like slacking him. She's like, send me your LinkedIn link again. And then he did a call with me. And that's how I got in the interview pipeline and then got my job. And as I've been talking to everyone at the company, like, oh yeah, so we've all worked at these other startups together before. We almost only hire people we know on our network. We like don't have an HR department. We don't really hire like random people who apply. I was like, yes, this Michigan girl who was like a psych undergrad, like super helpful. This is why I went to Michigan. And the other reason why I picked Michigan was because of the like action-based learning, both in Ross and then across the university. I just think that it's a really, really useful experience. Like as you like want to learn, like that's how I learn best. So I just thought there were so many resources around the university and around Ross that like couldn't pass up.
I love it. I love it. And I hear those stories all the time, right? This is not just like Justin Christina stories, right? So this is like all the time. And I chose Michigan, I mean, truly for its impact orientation. So as a top public school, it's part of our ethos to make an impact in the world, right? To create leaders who are going to create change, right, in the world. And so that was something that was really important to me. It was also important to me because I didn't know where I wanted to be geographically after, to have a school that was geographically well dispersed. So even if you know you want to be in some place like immediately after, you might have a partner who's going to move you to the other side of the country, right? And or to another part of the world, right, Christina? So you never know what's going to happen, you know, and where you're going to end up. So, I mean, I really like the fact that the network really travels well. So great. Thank you guys. So let's talk about the essays and about the application, right? So get some application tips out here. So the consortium application is going to open in the middle of August. So all the schools have given the consortium all the supplemental things and things that they need to put the application together. Just to give you an overview, our essay questions are largely the same as our regular application. I say largely because the career goal essays that we have in our regular application versus the consortium one is slightly different, but very, very similar. Similar enough that we're looking for your career goals, right? So this is the consortium career goals essay. One piece of advice that I want to give you, a couple things. One, we have some career focused webinars coming up this fall. By that, I mean, we probably do 10 to 15 different hour-long career webinars where we talk about why Ross for healthcare, why Ross for tech, why Ross for social impact, sustainability, operations, you name it. All of those webinars are actually recorded and included on our events page. So wherever you sign up for events on our website, when you scroll down, it'll say, hey, do you want to hear our old admissions webinars or our old like career webinars? So that's a really great place to start. The other thing I'll mention is that our Business Beyond Usual student podcast does some episodes on things like, what does a career in tech really mean? And what's MBA recruiting all about? So these are all just resources that you can listen to, podcasts, webinars, and things to help you inform your career goal. I mentioned also that you can filter on our ambassador website based on their career interests. So do that, as well as maybe reaching out to some of our career clubs, right? If you want to talk to some of the leadership of one of the career clubs, you can do that as well. Okay. And then in terms of what we're looking for here, just a solid plan, honestly. So there's not like this like super in depth, like here's exactly how you write this. I think if you write it authentically based on what your trajectory is and why you believe that path is the right next step for you, you'll be on the right track. So the short answer career or a short answer essays that we have in the consortium app. So there's group 1 and group 2. So I'll start here. Are the same. So this is exactly the same. And I started off by talking a little bit about hands-on learning and about how it requires you to step outside your comfort zone, how you may fail, right? You're going to learn from those mistakes, but we have to have a supportive community around you to give you that courage and confidence to be able to take on some of those risks. You'll see that some of our prompts help us get to know who you are a little bit more, right? When the rubber meets the road, like I want people to know that I made a difference when or I was aware that I was different when, right? So that self-awareness that you bring to these is going to be really important. And I'll go to the next set and then we can talk collectively about them. So the next one, you're going to pick one of these 3. I'm out of my comfort zone when, I was humbled when, I was challenged when. Right. So this really immersive MBA experience requires you to have a level of self-awareness, a level of humility, a level of adaptability, right? If something doesn't go right, how do you adjust? How do you pivot? How do you build? And we're going to help you build those skills too. But we want to know how you bring some of those to bear and what some of your experiences have been. One of the things I will mention to you between these sets of essay questions is people will say, hey, should I write about my professional self, my personal self? What I would say is we have a lot of elements of your professional self in other parts of the application, right? We have your resume, we have what your recommender says about you, we're going to have your interviewer. You could pick a professional experience here that tells us something a little bit more about you, but I would encourage you to think about personal experiences as well, because we're not going to get that right in other places. And that might be more telling of who you really are, something that your friends might share about you. So one of the things actually I would say about these essays is I would talk to your friends about them, right? They're going to know the stories about you and that give you some fodder for thought here and things that you might want to share that you might be like, I don't know if I want to share that, right? So feel okay to be vulnerable, to be personal, to be really reflective here. We're looking to get to know you more. Okay. So I put these 3 on the same slide, not because they're like less important and they need to be zipped through, but also because these are pretty standard tips that you'll get across schools, right? Recommendation letters. Largely you'll have 2 from the consortium, at least 2 on the admission side. We don't see the 3rd recommendation letter you do on behalf of the mission of the consortium. So just the 2 professional recommendations. Usually it's a direct supervisor, not always. We recognize maybe you haven't told your employer that you're looking to leave, but it should be people who can offer an objective perspective on who you're going to be as a classmate, who you're going to be on an internship, right? We want to know who you're going to show up to be, and the recommendation letters help give us that. The other thing I will tell you, this is sort of pro tip on the Michigan Ross side in terms of recommendation letters. One of the things I get out of recommendation letters sometimes is scrappiness, perseverance, stuff that's hard to find in other places. So I might look at another part of the application, maybe it's your academic profile or your test score or something, and it might not be up to where you want it to be, or you might feel it's a little bit lower. If I find evidence in other parts of your application that you really were persistent and you were able to push through, it's going to give me more confidence that you're going to show up for office hours, that you're not going to let your team down. That means more to me than a 750 GMAT, right? Like we have lots of people with really high GMATs that don't do that well in the classroom because they don't put the effort in. And so your character matters, right? The perseverance that you have, all of those things. And some of those things come out in the recommendation letters. Resume, the pro tip here is, show your impact. That I think is probably a common tip that you've heard. I actually like to see something personal at the bottom of the resume, because I think of your resume as a conversation piece between either you and the admissions committee, or in our instance, it's the only thing the interviewer is going to see. So, if you have something interesting or a hobby or something unique about you, that could be something you put at the bottom of that resume. What I would advise is, I like to cook, run, and bike is a lot more boring than I like to cook paella and I've ran 6 interesting races and I bike every weekend, right? Like, tell me something about that hobby that's a little bit more than I cook, right? So just be mindful if you are going to put something at the bottom, make it, not make it interesting. If it is interesting, tell us a little bit more than just the 1 or 2 words, right? And our interviews are by invitation only. And so that's after you apply, we invite you to interview. It will be with an alumni and it will be virtual this year. And that's when we ask you why Ross. Okay, so a lot of times people will say, hey, where do I put that in the application? What we found is in written format, it comes across a little flat. It's a little different than when you're able to articulate your own story, your own narrative in person. Okay. All right, let's knock them out. Should I apply for the test waiver? we don't mess around, not pulling any punches here. So the Michigan Ross application opens next week. Obviously, as we talked about, the consortium application doesn't open up until August, but our test waiver process is going to open up next week with our regular app. And the reason that we put the test waiver process in place is because we heard from a bunch of folks that they said, it's really difficult for me to be able to take the test online, to take it at home, to have a stable Wi-Fi connection. I live in a multi-generational home. You can imagine not only in the US, but internationally, all of the things that came up over the course of the past year that really were difficult, not to mention, of course, all of the mental strain for a whole variety of reasons over the course of the last year. So we recognize that, and we have offered the waiver, and we will continue to offer the waiver. What I would say in terms of deciding whether to apply for a waiver, so that's how it works. You apply for the waiver, and then we say yes, yes, you're in, or no, and you give us the substantiating documentation, whether it's the resume, your transcripts, other supporting documents. I would say it's really a very personal decision. It's not, if my score is less, then I should do this, right? Because in some cases, your score could actually help your candidacy. And I don't just mean if it's 720 or above, okay? We had some people who did the test waiver who ended up going to like places like Wharton or Booth, and those schools don't have a test waiver. So they had a test. They freaked out. They didn't submit it to Ross. They're going to Wharton with that test score. Should have submitted it. Right? So there's no really clear cut way to say, hey, here's what's going on. And just because you do the test waiver, it's not a negative indicator on your candidacy by any means. We are going to take a look at the available information that we have, and we need that to give the confidence that we need to the faculty to say, yes, this person's going to be academically ready to succeed in the program. So we're going to take a look at other elements. I told you, your professional work experience, your undergraduate, record or transcript, the rigor of the work that you're doing, things like that, we're going to use to balance that out. Okay. All right. How do I share my Why Ross in the consortium app? That'll be in the interview. Are my chances better getting in round 1 versus round 2? No. Right, apply in the round that your application is the strongest. There's no difference in scholarship implications. We'll talk a little bit about the consortium fellowship and the rankings and stuff in a second. So just apply when your app is the strongest. How are the rankings considered? We don't see them until after we tell the consortium you've been admitted. Okay, so they have no bearing on your admissions decision. And I will also tell you that we've largely made our scholarship decisions by that point too. Right. So, we have people that we've given full rides to that haven't ranked us first, right? It's not just if first, then full ride, right? That's not how it works. We actually look at the competitiveness of the candidates through our merit-based scholarship process in advance of even knowing where you've ranked us. Okay. And so that's the amount, and we don't adjust scholarship amounts after they've been awarded. Okay. So we don't see the rankings. Rank according to your best fit. Justin or Christina, any thoughts on the rankings? Like, any thoughts on how you ranked?
I ranked Michigan #1 actually. So,
but like, how did you think about it in terms of the rank?
To be honest, to be transparent, I had UCLA as #1 because I thought I wanted to go into entertainment tech. I thought UCLA was the best fit for it. Then I came for Michigan's diversity weekend, and I was like, okay, this is the place. And I didn't know what fit really was until I visited Michigan. But I think, to kind of what Christina was mentioning, they were basically, a lot of the students who were here were basically like, hey, let us know what schools you're applying to, and we have friends there as well, and we can put you in touch with them so you can get a sense of what their schools were like. And I felt like no other school was like that. On top of the other things that I'd already mentioned that fit that criteria for Michigan being the top school, in my opinion. That was the selling point for me, because it felt like it was community driven and they just wanted to see me win. And so that's why I ranked them #1.
Yeah, I would say this is like kind of tough in these times, but if you can visit, I think that's really special. So I visited Michigan 3 times before I came to Michigan, and every time I would call my partner to be like so happy, and he'd be like, "Okay, settle down, everything's fine." But Diana, I don't know if this is a good or bad thing. Like I didn't have any trouble ranking because Michigan's the only consortium school I applied to.
Yeah,
So, easy one.
that might be it too. There's really no like, if this, then you're disqualified or you're not considered for this or whatever. Honestly, it's like we get the rankings after we make our admissions decisions, right? So pick the schools that are going to be the best fit for you, you know, and the rankings will work themselves out. Don't get all hung up on the rankings, okay? And actually, who knows? We keep talking about the rankings at the consortium. We'll see if things adjust a little. So, all right, we talked about that. And last piece of advice, and then happy to answer questions. Keep an eye on our admissions blogs and videos. Talk to our student ambassadors or our consortium ambassadors. You'll see on the page. I mentioned the Business Beyond Usual podcast. Take a look. And I also mentioned the recorded webinars.